6 men kidnapped an old woman for leverage. 11 minutes later, 3 of them were dead, and the boss they feared most was on his knees beside her. Before we drove in, subscribe, share, and likes. Now. Kong Si didn't raise his voice. He never had to. In the glass tower above Gangnam's midnight skyline, 12 men waited for him to speak, and none of them breathed until he did. "Find who did this," he said quietly, staring at a photograph on his desk. A woman's face, decades old, edges soft from handling. He touched it once, then closed the drawer like he was closing a wound. Across the city, in a narrow apartment above a shuttered laundromat, Ruth Marshall hummed an old hymn while she folded a child's sweater that no child had worn in 30 years. She kept it in a drawer lined with tissue paper, the way you keep something sacred. Every night she checked the locks twice. Every night she whispered the same name into the dark, a name she hadn't spoken aloud to another living soul since the day she signed the papers that gave her son away. She told herself it was to save him. She told herself that every single day, and some days she almost believed it. Ruth was 71 now, her hands roughened by 40 years of sewing other people's clothes, her spine bent from bowing, to a life that had never once bowed back. She had built herself small in soul, quiet, invisible, careful, because the man who once hunted her family had eyes everywhere, and safety, she'd learned, lived in silence. Have you ever had to let go of someone you love to protect them, even if it meant they'd never understand why? Drop your answer below. That night, a black van idled outside the laundromat for the 3rd time that week. Ruth noticed. She always noticed. She just didn't know that this time, noticing wouldn't be enough. The van doors slid open at 2 a.m. 3 men in black moved fast, one hand over Ruth's mouth, another gripping her wrists as her sewing basket clattered to the floor. She didn't scream. 71 years of survival had taught her that screaming rarely saved anyone. Instead, she memorized their faces the way she'd once memorized escape routes in another lifetime, another country, another name. "You have no idea who you just touched," she whispered, and one of the men actually laughed, until she said a name, not her own, his. By morning, the message reached Kong Si through a burner phone left in his mailbox, a photo of Ruth, bound to a chair, and 4 words, "We have your weakness." He stared at the photo for 11 seconds before his hands began to shake, something none of his men had ever witnessed. Not fear of the syndicate, fear of the face in the picture. The same face from the drawer in his desk. "Where?" he said, and this time his voice cracked the room in half. "She's nobody," Kong Si told his second-in-command, Min Jae, jaw tight. "An old woman. A mistake. They grabbed the wrong target." He said it twice more before Min Jae stopped believing him. Alone, he opened the drawer again. 30 years of silence stared back. A photograph, a hospital bracelet with a name half-faded. Baby boy Marshall. He'd built an empire hunting for scraps of a mother who, he was told, walked away without looking back. Now she was tied to a chair because of him. "It changes nothing," he said aloud, "to no one." He was lying, and some part of him, the part still 6 years old, still waiting by a window, knew it. If you found out the person you resented most had actually been protecting you all along, would you forgive them, or would the anger already be too deep? Tell me honestly in the comments. He led the extraction himself, something no boss of his rank ever did. Gunfire, 6 minutes, 2 men down. When Kong Si finally kicked open the basement door, Ruth looked up at him with blood on her lip and something unreadable in her eyes. Not fear, recognition. He cut her ropes himself, hands trembling in a way his enemies had never seen. In the safe house afterward, he stood in the doorway of her room for 11 straight hours, unable to explain to Min Jae, or himself, why he wouldn't leave. "You have his eyes," Ruth finally said, not looking up. "I used to think I imagined them." "I didn't." Kong Si said nothing, but he didn't walk away either. "Show me your left shoulder," Ruth said quietly. He didn't ask why. He pulled back his collar, and there it was. A small crescent scar, the one he'd had since birth, the one his adoptive family always called the moon mark. Ruth's hand covered her mouth. I held you for 11 minutes before they took you out of that hospital room. I counted every second. Her voice broke. I gave you up, C. Not because I didn't want you, because your father's men swore they'd kill you the moment they found out you existed. I ran. I had to make you disappear to keep you alive. Kong Si sat down slowly, like the floor had shifted beneath him. 30 years of rage had a new shape now, and he didn't know what to do with it. For 3 days, something almost gentle grew between them. Ruth cooked badly, and he never told her, and he sat across the small safe house table, listening to stories of a childhood he never got to have. She showed him a single photograph she'd kept hidden for 3 decades. Him, 6 days old, wrapped in the same sweater still folded in her drawer. I check the papers every year, she admitted, just to see your name change, your school, anything. I never once stopped watching from a distance. He laughed. Actually laughed, for the first time in longer than he could remember. For a moment, in that small kitchen, Kong Si wasn't a boss. He was just a son. It wouldn't last. Min-jae brought the file at midnight, his face grim. You need to see this. Photographs. Ruth, 12 years ago, meeting quietly with a man from the very syndicate that had just kidnapped her. Kong Si's chest went cold. He confronted her with the file thrown on the table between them. Explain this. Now. It's not what it looks like, Ruth said, panic rising in her voice. Everyone always says that, he snapped, standing so fast the chair toppled. You lied to me for 30 years. Why would tonight be any different? Sigh, please. Don't, he said, voice ice again, the boss returning like armor. I should have known better than to trust a stranger. He walked out. Ruth sat alone in the dark, silent tears falling onto a photograph of a boy she'd loved from a distance her entire life. Kong Si stood on his rooftop until dawn, the city lights blurring beneath him. Min-jae approached carefully. Boss, there's more in that file. You should read all of it before you decide anything. He almost refused. Pride told him to burn the file and disappear back into the man he'd been before she reappeared. But something, the crescent scar, the 11 minutes she counted, the sweater in the drawer, wouldn't let him. He opened the file fully this time, and what he read changed everything. Ruth hadn't been meeting the syndicate to betray him. She'd been paying them, quietly, for years, out of every dollar she earned sewing, to keep them from ever finding out he existed. His hands shook around the paper. He'd accused the one person who never stopped protecting him. He found her at the bus station, suitcase in hand, ready to disappear again the way she always had. 11 minutes, he said, breathless from running. You held me for 11 minutes, and then you spent 30 years protecting me from a distance, because you loved me too much to let me get close enough to be hurt. Ruth froze. You weren't meeting them to betray me, he said. You were paying them to leave me alone. For years, with everything you had. Her suitcase hit the ground. This time, when he pulled her into his arms, there were no ropes, no fear, no distance left between them. Just a mother and the son she'd counted every second of loving. But as they embraced, Min-jae's phone buzzed in his pocket. An unread message from an unknown number. Tell your boss his mother isn't the only one who's been watching all these years. Ruth's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. Kong Si didn't see it, but the camera did. Do you think Ruth's secret is finally over, or is there someone else out there who's been watching this whole time? Comment your theory below. I might feature the best one in part 2.